Good morning and welcome. This is Chase Palizak at Axios HR, and today we are running a webinar on managing culture in your small business. We have a couple special guest panelists here today from LaFleur Marketing. We have founder Chip LaFleur and EVP Fallon Peters. So why don't you guys go ahead and just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do and the company that you started.
Sweet, thanks, Chase. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. So we started up really about 5 years ago. We didn't start with like investment money, so it was kind of go and get clients immediately, basically. We started working with a lawyer down in Texas who I had known for a long time, and then we started working with the Independent Physician Association in California, which is a weird mix to start with. But what I wanted to do was, I've worked at a number of different agencies in the past, and I wanted to create an agency that was built and based more around delivering results as opposed to creating billable hours. So I had a number of experiences both on the tactical side of saying, hey, we're going to do this tactic. The tactic's successful because we've got metrics to show for it, but it wasn't impacting the business, right? So like visibility and organic search, we could get a website to show up well, but like we weren't growing the business. So I moved over to like a more full service agency, and then we kept generating billable hours, but again, we weren't tying it to like the results. So I thought that, especially on the digital side, we could create something where our accountability came from the number of sales, the number of clients that we could get. So instead of measuring through like, we measure, of course, impressions and clicks, engagements and things like that. But we also sit down with most of our clients, where the model fits, and say, what do your sales look like? Which clients did you bring in? And then can we track backwards through our analytics, through our tracking to find out how we got them? So that was 5 years ago. Started out with just myself, hired one person. I think we're up to 23 people now, something like that. So over the course of 5 years, we've been able to expand. And oddly enough, mostly not in Michigan. Most of our clients are all over the country. So we work with a lot of lawyers up and down the East Coast, Texas, in California, healthcare, kind of across the country too. And then I think as people have kind of learned more about what we do and how we do it, we've attracted a little bit more local visibility. So now we're starting to get local clients, even though we've never really advertised or marketed ourselves here in Grand Rapids. We don't market ourselves like a Grand Rapids firm, even though we are, because a lot of our audience is all over the country.
Awesome. And in a tight-knit community like Grand Rapids, I think that kind of speaks volumes too, because this is such a place where it's like, who you know and who they know and who they know. So for you to be able to come in and have that kind of grassroots growth like that and just grow organically as far as who your company is and getting your name out there, it's pretty impressive, honestly.
Thanks. Yeah. It's been fun. I mean, I think that the purpose of this webinar and one of the key things that has allowed us to do that is our ability to attract talent and bring people in and get them excited about what we do and how we do it. And I think that in the way that we treat people and in the way that we kind of create the scenario for employment, we try to incentivize people for the right reasons. So it's the same premise of, if you hire us to help you grow a law firm or a business, e-commerce business or something like that, if we align like our end goals together, then we're going to be more successful. And the same thing goes for our team, right? If we can align and create a situation where they have a better experience and it helps the business, then we're going to have a better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So Fallon, how did you kind of fall into your role?
It happened through the tight-knit community of Grand Rapids and who through conversations with a friend of mine who had worked with Chip in the past. Got wind of a position there, started as a project manager and took on account management, and then eventually into a general manager role, and then into the EVP role. So, but yeah, just like Chip said, I was the 6th employee there at the time. I've been there for almost 4 years, and really have enjoyed the culture, experiencing it myself, and then also helping to expand that culture and grow it as we've grown pretty rapidly, hiring waves of people at a time and making sure that we're sticking to what we set out to create in the first place, which is a place where people are treated like adults and they have autonomy and respect, and you don't have to prove yourself. We're going to assume that you're working under the best intentions, and yeah, work hard, play hard, and have freedom to do what you need to do as long as you're doing your job.
Yeah, and it's really kind of the way it should be. I mean, when you give people the ability to really take responsibility for their own roles, I feel like most times it will kind of surprise everybody who's working around them, just like the level of excellence that they can kind of push themselves to.
Mm-hmm.
And so like with you being there kind of since the company's inception or pretty close to it, like how have you in your frame of mind seen that culture develop from, when you started 4 years ago to like where it's at now?
I think the coolest thing has been taking an idea that we had in one of our pillars is community involvement, and having this idea that we want to be out in the community and we want to be giving back, and that not only brings closeness as a team as you volunteer together, but taking those ideas and then actually putting them out into processes. We're a pretty process-driven group, which I think allows us to have those freedoms, and bringing somebody on board to be we have a community relations manager, which I think is pretty rare at our size. So having that person come in, and she is the one that lines up all of our volunteering opportunities every month. She's getting our name out in the community. So that's been really cool to see something that's an idea actually evolve into a process and something that we're being held accountable for on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like I was reading a little bit about your company as a whole beforehand over the last couple of weeks, and I saw that you guys had been involved with Kids Food Basket and I think the Children's Place.
The Children's Healing Center.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so how did you guys kind of get looped in with that? Like, how do you kind of identify which organizations, align with your whole culture and like what you want to represent?
So I think that's pretty purposeful. So what we do is we just have kind of as part of our policy, basically, we try to do a half a day of some sort of community nonprofit volunteering work, ideally instead of like a half day work, right? So that gives us 12 opportunities at least throughout the year to say, okay, every month we're going to try to identify one and we're going to jump in there and do something. And so among our whole team, we ask for people to just say, if you see an opportunity that's meaningful to you, bring it to our attention and kind of put it in the basket, and we'll try to get to it. We try to stick with things that we think are going to be more appealing to a larger group, right? But then everybody has passions internally and things that are important to them, and so those are the things that they tend to seek out. So like Jane on our team, I think either she or Sarah got the Humane Society of West Michigan and got us plugged in there to help out with them. We went in and we cleaned up a couple rooms and adopted the rooms, basically.
Oh, cool.
So went in, cleaned it, prepped it, painted them all, over the course of like a couple months, I think, something like that.
We go in once a quarter.
Yeah, so once a quarter we go in there. We've done like blood drives, through different organizations, stuff like that, because somebody came to us and said, hey, this is important to me. So a lot of the identification of the organizations that we'll partner up with happens kind of organically. And then occasionally, I guess it's happening a little more now, sometimes those organizations will come to us and say, hey, we have this need. Is there a way that you could help us out with it? We also do an annual free website for nonprofit that needs it. We try to do one of those a year. But this year, a nonprofit that won the Connecting with Community Awards here on Wood TV, CIRC, they go in and they teach kids how to do first aid and be first responders basically at schools. Also introduce them to law enforcement, fire department, emergency rescue people. They came to us and said, hey, we won this thing with Wood TV, which is awesome. Wood TV puts out these PSAs over the air for the next year, and we don't have a website. Can you come in there and help us out with it? So our actual project was HQ, and that's a homeless youth drop-in center. So we built that. We were done with that. We thought we were done with the nonprofit website thing. But then CIRC came and they needed it, And so if we can have the bandwidth to do it, we'll do it. So that's a really long answer to your question. We try to partner with, things that align with our team internally. But if something like that comes up and it kind of sparks an interest to it, we'll do that too.
That's awesome. And it seems like the kind of open source format that you have for that has really kind of expanded your name within some of these organizations in the community. So, I mean, you're getting even more people who are kind of coming to you for that.
Yeah, and that's the business case for it, right? So, I mean, like, we feel good about this, and it's funny to sit here and talk about, hey, we're doing these good things, and isn't that great? But as a business owner, I also want to be profitable, right, and have the business be successful and things like that. And so part of that equation is that when we create these opportunities to go in and do something that has real meaning here in this community, that brings our team together, we get to go out and we went out and planted a bunch of pawpaw trees, on Riverside Park. That's something that we all got to do together. We're getting away from our desks. We're doing a totally different team building activity. We're getting out and doing something that's a little more physical. We're getting some fresh air. And each of those things has a positive impact on the company itself, right? So what we've seen is that people work twice as hard before and after because they're excited about doing this thing. After they finish the project, they come back in and they're like, that was so much fun. And, and generally speaking, I mean, you're working with the people that you work with, you spend a huge chunk of your time with. And so you get to know more about them doing things like that than anything else. So there's efficiencies that carry over from that kind of activity. And you could go on a team building exercise and you pay for a career coach to help you with that stuff. And I think all those things are great. Or you can go and do a half day's work. It doesn't have to be every month. It could be once a quarter or things like that. But I think that there's a great business case. I think it's going to help you be more profitable. It's going to help you keep your employees more engaged. It's going to help you with recruiting. So even without the I feel good about this stuff part, I still think it's worth doing, because it just has a really positive impact on our team.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of these organizations that you can get involved with too. I mean, it's not like anything that you have to pay through the nose to do. I mean, a lot of it is, free, and it's volunteer works, and getting outside and, to your point, getting some exercise, spending some good time with people that you enjoy and that you work with. I mean, it's going to have a huge return on investment back in the office.
For sure.
So you can share about those things on social media, and then the organizations share about what you've done on social media. So you're getting in front of their network and their following as well. So I think that has been one of the big catalysts of our growth here locally, is just getting our name out there more and more and having that visibility through those volunteering opportunities.
Yeah, and doing good in the community is always good in West Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So But kind of a segueing into education, is it kind of an open source similar to your involvement with these organizations and the community? So what exactly do you do with your employees for education?
Whoops, I went too far. So you're kind of talking through some of our pillars and kind of some of our values as an organization.
Yeah.
And then we talked about community involvement on the education side. On the education side, again, we try to kind of self-empower people to say, this is interesting to me, this is appealing to me. We're a relatively small company, so it's not like we can do a full ride scholarship to get people their MBA and things like that. But we have been able to pay for books and materials and things like that to help people do that. We have had people who go through and then get their MBA by having us help them do that. A lot of online courses, things like that. We'll send people to conferences, and we look for that feedback from our team. When they see opportunities to make what we're doing better or to stay current, stay thought leaders, they come in and say, I want to go to this conference, it's over here. And so we've sent out a lot of people to a lot of different places to do that. Right now, Catherine on our team is going through a diversity and inclusion program. It's based out of a college up in Canada. I don't recall the name of the college, but that's something that was important to her. It's important to us too, but she found it, identified the opportunity, identified the cost associated, made the business case, and said, hey, I want to do this. And so, our team really self-drives a lot of that stuff. If I see an opportunity or if Balance sees an opportunity, we put it out there too. But it's got to align with what our team kind of wants to do. And if we can kind of go just a little bigger picture, as we're looking at what we're talking about here, transparency, family education, community involvement, all of this kind of comes back to, on the transparency side, building out systems and processes that are measurable gives us the ability to implement all of the other things that kind of attract people to our organization, I think, right? So I think that like the measurement of butts in seats for a certain amount of time is not a very good metric, right? People go to work, I'm going to work 40 hours a week. This is how much we get paid. You know, like I get it, because there's not a great way to say, okay, this is how we're going to delineate that. But I'd rather have a person working 30 hours a week who's more productive than someone who's working 40. And so we try to identify ways to make everybody's jobs more measurable outside of just tracking time, right? Because then what that allows us to do is function and run as a profitable business, but support these other things, right? So we want people to have a good, healthy family life. It's really important to us. How do you get that, right? You have to be able to go in and kind of have control over your own schedule. You have to be able to go and pick up your kids, drop your kids off. You have to be able to take time out for, you know, 8th grade graduation, things like that, you know, and some of those things are just during work hours. It's just a fact. And so we try to make our deliverables and our processes measurable in such a way that people can just come and go as they please, and we can measure the volume of work that they're doing in a way that's better than just tracking time, right? So that's kind of where that starting point comes from, and that's how that gets us into those other things. On the education side, people can identify ways to be more effective in the metrics that matter. They're going to identify those things because ultimately that's going to make them better at the thing, and that's going to free up some more of their time so that they can have this productive environment, so we can do the community involvement so that they can take time with the family and things like that.
Yeah, which is really refreshing, because I think I read in an article probably about 2 weeks ago that, you know, there's so much pressure in a lot of organizations to, you know, hit your numbers, be successful, do X, Y, and Z and the other thing, and, you know, have all these balls in the air at the same time. And people are feeling almost kind of like their home life and their personal life outside of the office is, you know, almost an inconvenience. And it's like, oh, well, you know, I shouldn't, you know, feel good about, you know, taking time to like go do this one thing, or, you know, I have this appointment that I just absolutely can't reschedule, and it's going to be like 6 months in the future, and I kind of have to do it today, but, you know, I can't do it, or I feel bad about it. So it's good to know that that is something that you guys are incorporating in the grassroots, and it's something that you really kind of push for your employees to do. Like, it is okay to do this. You have a life. Like, we love you and we appreciate you and what you do here, but what you do here is not the entirety of your life,
right?
Which is good. So with all these systems and processes that you've been implementing, like, how has that kind of impacted your guys' employee engagement?
Well, if we click over to the next slide there, actually, I think it's had a very positive effect. So this is out of a platform called Office Vibe, and we've had Office Vibe since 2015. We've been using this. And, you know, we're at the 97th percentile of employee engagement and satisfaction, which I feel pretty good about. And you can kind of look back, you know, all the way through 2015, and we've constantly tried to improve and build on that, right? And it goes up and down. You know, you do have issues that you got to work through and figure out and things like that. But I think all of those things kind of put together have gotten us to this point here. Your employee net promoter score, your ENPS, is kind of the most important score that you can track if there's just one metric that you watch. Because that is, you know, the answer to the question of, would you recommend to a friend or family member that this would be a good place to work, right? So we're at the 97th percentile of that, which I feel really good about. And we measure this through Office Vibe, which provides a great platform to say, we send out, about 10 questions, you know, about once a week, once every other week. And Office Vibe creates the questions, and it asks about your work-life balance. It asks about management structure. You know, it provides a platform for truly anonymous feedback. So people can say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this situation. We don't know who said it, but now we can find out about it. And so we read what that feedback is, you know, and try to incorporate it. So I think all of the things that we're doing, I mean, I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of it. From what we can see on the detail side, we can actually see like the reason it dropped down to 81 is that a couple people didn't answer, right? So like they got the thing, if they don't answer, it counts against your total score, right? So I think it's had a pretty good and pretty measurable positive impact. Based on everything that we can see, you know, because what we found is that we hear less and less of kind of what's going on in the office, especially as you grow, people are less likely to bring something to kind of the leadership team. This lets us have a little bit of a window into that, and it lets us get an early indicator if there are things that we need to address.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, obviously it's working. Like, it's pretty much a linear trend line up there. And being able to take it from, if you look between November 15 and March 16, being able to take it from a gully and just make an incredible leap up there. I mean, it speaks to the fact that you guys are not just wanting to get feedback on what's going on. It's that you're wanting to get feedback and you're doing something about it, which is honestly like 80% of the battle. Like,
yeah,
it's, any company can really go into a scenario and be like, all right, well, we'd love to know what you think.
Yeah.
Give us your feedback. It's all welcomed. But that's not a guarantee that anything is really going to change.
Right.
So what are some of the factors over here that kind of blend into that with the employee engagement and satisfaction?
So I think to speak to that, and some of when there have been gullies, and like you were saying, we look and we see what's going on and then responding to that. So that initial gully out of the gate was wellness, and that was something that kept coming up of, I don't feel like I'm really treating my body in the best way possible. So some of the things we did when we found that out were we implemented a health and wellness challenge and went over the summer and had an exercise challenge that happened. And then the other thing that we started and continue to this day is offering healthy snacks and meals. We always have a stocked fridge, freezer, and pantry of food, so that if you're working along and you can't get out for lunch or you don't want to spend the money, there's usually something that's pretty healthy or fairly healthy in the freezer that you can take out and make for yourself. And that's been a huge perk. Surprisingly, a lot of people have talked about how much it helps them just getting out the door in the morning to know that if I don't have time to pack a lunch or I forgot to bring something, we've got your back and you can eat here in the organization. So that was something that came along. And then again, looking at those scores, and really, I think Chip and I are looking at this, on a monthly basis and saying, okay, what's the lowest one? What can we try to do to improve that thing? Even if it's not a bad score, but continually trying to make improvement and noticing when we see dips.
Yeah. And I mean, none of these are bad scores, but it really does kind of help to be able to kind of get the whole scope and be like, all right, well, last year this was an 8.5, we've seen a transition to, an 8.7, and this is kind of what we can track it back to. And it's nice too that you guys don't necessarily always, just stick with one thing. I mean, some companies are only like, food is our only thing, but you're coming up with creative ways to kind of get people active and get people moving, kind of working outside the traditional guidelines of what that has been in the past. So it's always good to see. But with these, talk to me a little bit about this, the peer-to-peer recognition.
So the platform that we use for peer-to-peer recognition is called Bonusly. And the idea behind it is that each month every employee gets a bank of Bonusly bucks to give to other employees in the organization at their discretion. Some of the caveats are you have to include one of the hashtags, which you can see in the examples here, productivity, trial, which is kind of an internal thing that we do, and teamwork is a big one. So you get to write these funny things. Bonusly has incorporated a GIF feature, which makes it even more fun. And then these are displayed in our office and then also through our Slack channel. We have a Bonusly integration so that every time somebody gets one of these, the entire organization gets to see it. So it's not only peer-to-peer, but it's also visible by the entire team. So I may not know that Liz made a sweet Office 360 video, but because Pat gave her 75 Bonusly bucks for that, I get to see that, and then I can also tag on and say, oh, hey, what is this thing? Go look at it, and then add Bonuslys to that. It's been a really great way to incur banks of cash as an employee that just gets to prove the great rapport between our team members.
Yeah, and seeing this is actually really cool because we just started kind of a podcast-ish, but our first episode was how many HR people do you need? Our second one that's going to be released talks a lot about exactly this, and it kind of dives into your company culture and like the true definition of what that is, what people say about you and your organization when you're not in the room. And being able to have this between your team, I think, is a great example of what your true culture really is. It's people who are being collaborative and really taking notice of what's going on in your company and really with each other too. And it seems like it's a great way to kind of keep accountable as well.
It is, and there's good data that supports that peer-to-peer recognition has a stronger impact on day-to-day productivity than recognition from leadership, right? So, when we were looking at, okay, should we do a bonus program, at the end of the year, how should we structure this, things like that. I'm not opposed to that, but there's also very little correlation between a bonus program and increased productivity, right? So, a lot of times you see it in sales roles, things like that, you hit your numbers, you get a bonus, and that's great. It's a goal that you can work towards. But then how do you apply that to the rest of the organization, because there are different metrics that are going to be measured for each different role. What Bonusly does, and Bonusly has some great data on their website too behind this, but what they do is they give this vehicle to everybody on the team. So we spend money every month with Bonusly. That money gets distributed equally to everybody on the team, and then they can give it out to whomever they want. And then these turn into, they basically can cash these out into gift cards, donations to their favorite nonprofits and things like that. I think Fallon's watch came from.
Yeah, my Apple Watch was my big goal a couple of years ago. I had a goal to get enough Bonusly so that I could buy an Apple Watch, which I really wanted and didn't want to pay for out of my own pocket. And so that was a fun goal to try to reach.
Yeah.
I think Jason got a bike, right? Jason got a new bike. So I mean, like, people save these up, and then they spend them, And so it's like it's a personal thing for them to reach that goal. If we click on the next slide there, these are the hashtags that people are getting for this stuff. So their backend data is also very cool to look at. But it helps you see, like, what are we doing well, and who's really excelling. So teamwork, ownership, vision, birthdays. But it's cool to be able to see kind of who's getting what and what that breaks down to.
Yeah, and to that point too, like as far as bonuses go and everything, it really kind of is diminishing return. Like in your case, you had the goal of the Apple Watch, but getting the Apple Watch is probably great, but doing everything up to that point and participating, getting recognition for things and like really kind of giving everything your all and finding new ways to do that was probably in a way almost more rewarding than the actual thing itself. So I think that's actually a pretty interesting way to look at it.
It's really cool. And then that thing continues to be a reminder of, hey, I did a great job. I got this tangible thing that I wear every day. And so it was a cool goal to work towards. The other cool thing about Bonusly, which we don't show a slide here, but you can run a report to see who's received the most. So if you're a manager on a team and you're wondering like, okay, who do I need to help along the way a little bit? Who's doing a great job? Who do I need to recognize for that? There's great reporting tools in that regard too.
Yeah.
And it all comes from helping other people on the team, right? So it's not like you can go up a ladder and say, hey, I'm going to get in really good with this one person, and that's going to help me earn more money. It's 100% collaborative, right? So like if Fallon wants to earn the watch, she earns it by helping other people out, because you're not going to earn it just by doing your job, right? I mean, you're going to earn it by saying, okay, you know what, I saw there was a need here, or I did my job exceptionally and people noticed that and it helped them with their job. So it just is very non-centralized and nicely distributed. And if you really want to get something, the thing that you do when you come in that morning is you think, how can I help other people out so I can get the Bonusly to do the thing? None of it is just like, I'm just going to do this one thing all on my own. It all has to be collaborative by the nature of the system.
Yeah, and sometimes it seems like people have the misconception that, you know, the best way to, like, quote unquote get ahead is to just look out for you, you know, ladder climb however you can, whatever. And that's really completely backwards. It's like, if you do want to succeed, what you have to do is you have to help your team members. You have to really participate. You have to be cooperative in everything that's going on. If your team does well, then that's going to help other departments in the organization. And then the organization does well, profits grow, your company grows, and in turn, that's going to come all the way back full circle to you and help you get to where you want to get. So really, that is a perfect way of looking at it too, because it really does make sense.
It's all about building relationships. It's building relationships with your teammates, it's building relationships with your clients, and that's how you get that success and that feeling of belonging and inclusion, and doing something that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
This word map also pulls off bonusly, so you can see for the last 30 days, these are all words and they're bigger based on how many times they've been used in our bonusly program over the last 30 days. So you can see wonderful, blog, willingness, time, amazing, helpful, office. So it's just cool. It's cool to see this. Hurricane is in there, I can see, because over the last 30 days, one of our employees is based out of North Carolina, and so she's worked through weathering the hurricane, and I'm sure that's what that was all about. But this is a fun thing to look at too, that we share with the team each month.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool way to get a different picture of your company culture and what's actually going on. I mean, there's so many positive words here, you know, willingness, creative concepts, completing, grateful. I love that one. You know, it really kind of speaks to the feeling that you're really creating within LaFleur Marketing and what you've been able to cultivate. All right, so talk to me a little bit about this. What's all going on here?
So I mean, this is kind of a compilation of, I think, some of the things that we've done together as a team. So we've got like Kids Food Basket. We've got Fallon down there. Where was that? That was working at one of the.
That was it for Well House.
Well House. One of the early ones that we've done. We end up doing a lot of things together. That one, I think, in the lower right, I think was at that picnic boom?
No, that was at the parks, tree planting. Recently, you're cleaning up the parks.
Yeah.
At Roosevelt Park.
So, I mean, also at the heart of this, I mean, we just have a lot of really great and fun people, right? And so I think that it's pretty clear when you walk in that everybody knows each other, everybody gets along well, and people actually enjoy being in the same building and working together. The painting picture was actually our old office. I was out on a trip and we thought that the office needed to be refreshed, and so all of a sudden I came back and it was all repainted. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was an awesome thing to come back to, and everybody in our team just took it upon themselves to say, we're going to do this thing. We're going to try to make this thing better. And obviously that's not like directly related to anybody's performance. It was just because people wanted to do it and make it better. And we just have a great mix of personalities. You know, we've got Pat with the Christmas tree, and he goes, you know, over the top every year, and we love that. He actually did a kind of spoof video with some clients of ours that we put out on YouTube and put out on social media. It was just a lot of fun.
That looks incredible. Well, I really appreciate hearing about both of your stories and how you've managed culture, how you've grown it, and you know what your goals are to continue that positive effort towards, you know, your perfect idea of the culture that you want to cultivate at LaFleur. I want to take this time to open up the floor to any questions that we have. So we'll just give people a little second to type anything in the chat box. Okay, so here's one. How do you see the future of LaFleur Marketing's culture developing?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think that we stick with kind of the basics of what we're already doing. You know, we already feel very confident that what we're doing is working well. So we want to retain that. I think that it's very important to decentralize that as much as you can. So you can't just have a personality that, in the leadership team or anywhere else, it can't just be a personality that distributes itself and causes the organization to have a good culture and be appealing, right? You have to have systems and processes in place, and then those have to become decentralized and apply to the bigger picture. The way that we do that is through creating measurable systems and processes so we can have a window into that productivity, but still provide the autonomy to people to get that done. So as we scale up, we've been growing pretty consistently. As we scale up, those systems have to work at different scales, And I think that one of the very important things that we have to do is make sure that, as people come up and kind of join into the leadership side, as people come in and move forward on the leadership side, we have to make sure that those personalities are a good fit. They've got the same kind of values. And sometimes you have to make a hard decision to say, you know what, we need to make a change. But we have to stay true to that so that we can maintain the thing that we have.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we have a question from Jason Brower. Who's your favorite employee at LaFleur? Not loaded.
Interesting question.
Easy. This is my wife, right? So Sarah is my favorite employee. She is our community manager, right? So she gets a free pass. Fallon?
I would say the dogs of LaFleur are my favorite employees.
Oh, nice. You guys have office dogs?
We do have office dogs, yes. We allow people to bring in dogs, and we try to have a couple dogs in at least a week. So I would say the dogs of LaFleur are my favorite.
Oh, that's incredible. Thanks, Jason. Not a loaded question at all.
It was very PC.
How do you feel like your clients and people outside the company and the community view the culture at LaFleur?
I think they view it pretty positively. I mean, I know we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback. We've had like America's Business Journal approach us to talk about some of the things that we're doing. We were one of the finalists on the Connecting with Community Awards, along with a shelter that we were helping create a web presence. And so we're getting some of that feedback from media entities, which is nice. But I get a lot of just direct personal feedback from other business owners and other people in the community that say, you know what, I read what you guys are doing and we think it's cool and exciting. I've reconnected with people I've kind of lost touch with even who have followed us on LinkedIn. Just random people who will reach out and say, hey, what you're doing is kind of cool. And how do you make it work? And I don't think we make it work. I think us doing that makes us work. You know what I mean? So I feel like we've gotten a pretty good amount of feedback there that's been positive.
Yeah, and from a consumer perspective, having that be your discovery of a company that, maybe you have a need for their service or product that they have. I mean, there's really no better way to do that than to, open up your LinkedIn feed and scroll through and select an article that, wow, this company's been really making an impact in the community and I can really see this. Well, let's learn a bit more. Oh my gosh, they happen to do marketing. Well, I need this project done. And then you're top of mind.
Right. And I think it also communicates the fact that like, if we weren't good at the thing that we do, we wouldn't be able to afford to do these other things, right? So if we weren't able to work with our clients, deliver the results that they're looking for consistently and grow consistently, then we wouldn't have the bandwidth to take on the community involvement and things like that. I've got a friend of mine who always is rescuing animals, right? To a point that it's more than they can really handle, right? And so I think we all want to do good in the world and have a positive impact. But if the only thing that you do is volunteer work, then you're going to reach your upper limit of what you as an individual can do. Obviously in this world, we need to produce an income. We need to, make things work from that level, right? And so what we're able to do, I think, is have a positive impact in the community because we're good at the thing that we offer and we're efficient at it. And then that gives us the time to be able to do these other things, resources and the time to help out,
Yeah.
So it all kind of is tied together.
100%. All right, well, that looks like all the questions that we have, and looks like we're just about ready to wrap everything up. So Chip, Fallon, thank you so much for coming out today. We really appreciate your time. It was a super insightful webinar, and I mean, I definitely learned a lot. But if you have any interest in culture management, you can also give Axios a call at 844-442-9467, and we'd be happy to talk to you. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.